So yes, I'm back with part two. I'm so sorry I had to. So yeah, so we were talking with this friend of mine, right, about the same test. We were discussing, and then they wanted to hear my opinion on what do I say about the other test. So I was saying, I feel, especially when you're comparing diagnostic tests, every one of them would be good for certain context. In this case, if we are studying like the prevalence of all these genotypes, we want to know more about the entire 14 high risk genotypes, you would definitely consider that test they're telling me about, because it gives you each one of them. They call out each one of the 14 high risk genotypes in case we want to study them, or like whatever research we're conducting entails us wanting to know each and every one of the 14 oncogenic, high risk genotypes, right? That would be fine. But if the context is in the clinical setting, then the one that gives all the high risk genotypes is not as important, right? Because even if I know that is a 35 or a 32 or any other high risk genotype, whether it's called out or is called out as a pooled result, it's still good enough. In a clinical setting, what I want to know is it the guideline says we are treating instantly the 18, 16, or 45? Those are the three that I want them called out. The rest of the high risk, I want them, even if they are pulled, it's fine. We're going to reflex, right? We study further. We're going to reflex on cytology, on another test and stuff. But if it's one of the three, we need to act immediately. So for a clinical setting, I am good with a test that gives me the three being called out. The other high risk, they can be pulled, is fine. Even if they are called out or pulled, it doesn't make a difference. I can work with both. But I definitely want a test that calls all the three. So they told me about most of the other diagnostic tests that are in the market, especially in the private setting. They're able to even conduct their own testing. They put in a tampon, they test it immediately, self-collected specimen, which I love that a lot. WHO is really recommending that we must move to the specimen that are self-collected compared to the provider collected, right? For convenience and for privacy and comfort and all of that. So I'm good with it. I'm excited. And they did say they actually calling out the high risk genotype being the 18 and 16. So I'm saying that is good, very good, because the majority are 16 and 18, but we still need the 45 as well. So you need to make sure that whatever test you are picking, again, it should fit the purpose. So all the tests are good for different purposes, and some other tests, like other treatments as well, they need to be updated according to the latest data. For instance, when we had the vaccine back in a day, the HPV vaccine, for instance, we have a bivalent vaccine, the one that is mainly used in South Africa. That one protects girls from genotype 18 and 16. But now we know that the other important genotype is a 45, which back in the day, I guess it was not included, or it was not as prevalent. But currently we worry about the three genotypes, not just two. What does that mean? It means the vaccine would protect them against the two, but is leaving out the other high risk genotype being the 45 as well. So that is why we need to update science. We need to continuously study our intervention, continuously evaluate our intervention, and see if they still fit for purpose. Are they still serving the primary purpose that they were designed for? So with that being said, I did advise them to say, oh, it depends on a clinical setting. Depending on the setting you want the test for. For clinical setting, I definitely want the test that gives me the three, not two. I wouldn't care if it gives me more than that, but the one that requires the clinical actions, those three oncogenic ones, and then the rest of them, they can be pulled, it's fine. Even if they call them one by one, it's still okay, right? As for the vaccine, I would love to see, the authorities working towards getting a nanovalent or a vaccine that covers a wide variety of high-risk genotypes, particularly the three that are causing more than 95% of the cervical cancers, not just the two, because we are missing out the most another important one being the 45, right? So on the test, again, I did say once we determine what test gives what results in terms of the genotypes, right? So we need to go further to say, how is the sensitivity of the test. So as much as it sounds good and fine that it has the other one would give you so many of the genotypes, other one give you partial and all of that, let's now look at the performance of a test itself. How good is this test? We're looking at sensitivity, which talks to picking up the true cases. How good is this test in picking up the true cases? Tests perform differently. So those are that are in diagnostics, or that those that are taking decisions on what test are we using in the government, in private, in this lab, in this hospital, they know. You need to determine, you need to review such data to say how good is this test against the gold standard. Sensitivity, true cases. Specificity, negative cases. How good is this test in dropping really the false negatives, the true negatives, excuse me, true positives and true negatives. That is sensitivity and specificity. But most importantly, we have negative predictive value and positive predictive value. That is equally important. You cannot stop at sensitivity and positivity. You also want to know, to say, among these negatives, how truly negative are they? Am I not dropping by mistake the negatives that are called out as negative, and they are actually positives? Are they not false negatives? It measures that. Then the PPV, false positive, it measures that, the proportion of that, or the risk of calling out by mistake positive, whereas a specimen is actually negative, or calling it negative, whereas the specimen is actually positive. So one, sensitivity and positivity, talks to the true negative and the true positives. The other one, it determines the false negative or the false positive. False negative and false positives, right? So all those four are important: specificity, sensitivity, negative predictive value, which is NPV, and the PPV being the positive predictive value. It doesn't end there. We're comparing, right? Those tests that you will have, you need to compare the performance across all those tests. Then you're also gonna go and check the gene target. Remember, we are using, right now we're talking about the nucleic acid amplification test. Basically what this test does, it goes into the genome of the pathogen, of the bug, and then target a certain part of that particular genome, then amplifies it or replicate it to the identifiable threshold, then studies it. That's how these tests are working, the newest technology tests. The NET, or the molecular diagnostics, right? So what we want to know again is the gene target. In this genome, or the gene of that particular pathogen, which area of a genome is this test targeting? To remember, it has to pick it and then amplify it and studies it. So if you, for instance, you're taking one part of a genome that's important and you're leaving the other one, so maybe the one you've taken can be negative, right? Whereas the other important genetic target would be positive, but the test is not picking it up. So more than anything, when we're determining the performance, we also want to know what is the gene target, which area of the genome is this test targeting, because that talks again to the accuracy and the reliability of the test. So there's WHO standards where they're determining the reliability, the performance, and the accuracy of a test. So you want a test also that is WHO pre-qualified. Pre-qualification talks to how good the test is in meeting the gold standards, the global, the WHO standards, how reliable it is, how accurate it is, and all of that. So again, when you're deciding on a test, you want a test that is, if it's not a gold standard, how does it compare to the gold standard? And also, how is the performance? Also, is this test pre-qualified? Because that talks to, we all want quality, so that talks to the top quality of diagnostic tests. Today, when we're talking about HPV or healthcare, we're talking about access. Because back in the day, people will access healthcare because they travel and they went to the hospital or whatever. But now we want to be empowering the primary healthcare, being the GPs and the clinics and the level 1 hospitals, to be equipped well to manage all the common conditions. So also, how good is this test? Are we able to decentralize using this test? Because now we don't want people to be flooding the hospital. We want to decenter from the hospital so that the hospital can see the worst case scenarios or the serious cases, but the minimal cases, preventative care, must be seen in actually primary health care. So that matters as well. Decentralization, capability. My part 2 ends here. I can't go on part 3. That's all for today. Good evening.